Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Andrew's Insights. My name is Travis. I'm joined by Scott. And today we have a topic that is always timely to talk about, keeping your money secure and being aware of different financial scams that are out there and what you can do about protecting your accounts and protecting yourself. Before we jump into it, Scott, how you doing? And how was your 4th of July weekend?
Doing good, Travis. I think a 3-day weekend is always welcome, and it's a good reset for us as we enter the second half of the year. I was lucky to go to Oahu Country Club. My girlfriend's dad is a member, and they had a awesome fireworks show. Often you have to wait hours just to get a good seat, but they had it right there in the valley, so that was awesome to see. Travis, how was your 4th of July?
It was good. I didn't hang out at the country club, but I saw the fireworks and mostly kept indoors, and that was a much needed reset for me. So it was good.
Awesome. I think the second half of the year is gonna be great. And I think, like you said, the topic that we're talking about is always timely. But I think June was where they raised awareness around these scams and how we can better protect ourselves.
Yeah. So that's the topic for today's discussion. And I think to start with, Scott, why don't you share your version of the personal story that you had shared with our clients in our newsletter about the scam that you had gone through and the attempt that you had experienced.
Yeah, I like to think of myself as pretty aware of these scams. And generally, whenever I see a number I don't recognize, especially one that's either says no caller ID or if it's not a 808 number, I tend to just let those go. But now the iPhone has that feature where they say who's calling, right? They'll ask who's calling, and in this case, it was a officer. He stated he was an officer, gave his badge number, and said that he needed to talk to me. So then I picked it up because one, I also work part time at a golf course, so I was unsure if that was a military officer, which I did not want to avoid. But anytime you hear a law enforcement officer, it kind of makes you want to pick up the phone. But to
Yeah.
get to the point, they said I missed jury duty and they said I was under arrest and they needed to verify my signature. So that raised a lot of alarm bells in my head.
Yeah. Yeah. And fortunately, you have the experience to know how to navigate that. But we hear stories like that from our clients and from other seniors all the time. And the problem is that the scammers are getting more sophisticated and they know how to exploit different weaknesses in people's defenses. And so that's a good example, right, of how something can seem totally legitimate. You're getting a phone call from someone claiming to be an officer, have some sort of authority, and the natural reaction is you want to comply. But that's how the scammers get to people and get to their money.
Yeah, and I think the crazy part and the scary part was he was able to name my address, right? My parents' address, my current address. So, and it's all public information. But the fact that he was able to, one, of course, know my name, and then two, know my address, definitely made it seem more legitimate. But fortunately, something in my head said, hey, maybe this might not be correct. And I hung up the call and I had to keep my phone off for the rest of the day because they wouldn't stop calling now that they were talking to a live person.
Yeah. Yeah. And the form that these scam attempts take evolves over time. Right. And, I think people are familiar with getting scam letters, sent to them or faxed into offices that they work at. Phone calls are another common method of trying to scam people. But now with the use of technology, getting scam attempts sent to your email address is very common, and using AI to try and scam people, mimicking people's voices. That's the old traditional scam attempt is, you would get a phone call from your grandson who's in jail in Mexico and he needs, $5,000 to be bailed out. Well, now with AI, those voices we understand can be replicated of people that, you may actually know. And so there has to be some protocols in place to protect against the technology getting better.
Yep. And I think that's something that we really emphasize with our clients. And a lot of our clients have the great question of how do we know my money is safe? And I think Schwab has a lot of good protections. And even internally, we've created some new processes. And I guess, Travis, would you like to maybe elaborate on those?
Yeah, yeah. So there's, I think, multiple layers of security that you need to protect your accounts. I'll start with the first layer, which is what we do as an advisory team to keep our clients' money safe. And then there's another layer of what Charles Schwab does, which, Scott, you can kind of touch on that. What we do is we want to make sure that we know our clients. And whether you work with us or you work with another advisor, that's going to be an important step that the advisor takes, is making sure that they can identify you, that if you walked into their office, they'd be able to say, oh yeah, that's Joe, or oh yeah, that's Mary, recognizing by face, having your personal information on their file. And if you called into the office asking to take money out, which does happen from time to time, money out of your accounts, they would have a way to verify that that's really you calling in, whether that's by asking you some personal information that only you would know the answer to, or, running through date of birth, social security number, mother's maiden name, things like that. So that's one step that we take to keep clients' money secure, is making sure we know our clients and having all of that information available to us. The second way that we try to keep security high is doing regular check-ins with all of our clients. So we'll have meetings at least annually, sometimes semi-annually, where we make sure we know what's happening in our clients' lives. And this is where we can kind of look for if there's any sort of elder abuse going on or anything that shouldn't be happening. We have a pulse on that, and we'll be able to identify that before it gets out of hand. Anything you would add to that, Scott?
No, I think we try to, of course, meet with all of our clients on a regular basis. And also, we're aware of anything that might be off, right? Especially when we receive an email from a client, we make an extra effort to, of course, call, verbally confirm, and make sure that it's in line, right? If we get an email that says a client needs $100,000 immediately wired to them, that would raise alarm bells for us. But I think overall, we have layers that we have in place internally to make sure that you are who you are.
Yeah, and the verbal confirmation is a big one, right? If somebody calls asking to take, or emails asking to take a big withdrawal that we had never talked about before, we want to make sure we hear from the client, and make sure that we can confirm that without just taking instruction over email, because we see that that's a really easy way that people fall into these scams. Is you might get an email from a friend or someone that you think you know, but then when you really check that email address, it's off somehow, right? There's like a missing digit, or, instead of using an L, if there's an L in there, it's a one, different ways that people can spoof emails. From the Charles Schwab side of things, there's a few ways that Schwab protects client assets, right? Because overall, the client money is held with the custodian. It's held at Charles Schwab. So they need to have their safety protocol in place. We had just sent out a financial exploitation prevention checklist to all of our clients. Scott, maybe you can kind of walk us through some of those items and how Schwab keeps client money safe.
Yeah, definitely. I think, first of all, getting set up on the Schwab website, making sure you're claiming your online account, setting up what's called a multi-factor authentication, where you would need your cell phone number in place just to make sure that even if somebody were to get your username and password, that the multi-factor authentication, they can't access your account unless they had your cell phone. So that's another layer of protection there. Also, staying organized, staying on top of your accounts. Schwab makes a recommendation just to make sure you're looking at your statements, looking at your account balance, making sure that everything is in good order, and then also making sure that you're updating your password every now and then. I know there's a lot of passwords to keep track of. I mean, Travis, you and I must have hundreds of passwords across different websites. Making sure you're not using the same password over and over again for everything is definitely a good process. Having a password manager may be helpful for that. And then also just being cautious of remote access or logging into your account on public Wi-Fi's, things like that. That's just extra steps that Schwab recommends to make sure that your account is protected. especially online.
Yeah, those are all good points. And another thing that Schwab has done in the past, we've seen in cases where people do fall victim to scams or they believe that their information may have been compromised. If you have your accounts with a Charles Schwab or a big custodian, you can call them and let them know that they should be on alert, and they may place some restrictions on money leaving the account. And that gives you another layer of security that if your information has been compromised, if your password is out there somewhere, that Schwab will have an extra layer of supervision on any money leaving that account. They may even set up a verbal passcode that you have with Schwab. And so if someone were to call in to Schwab asking to take a withdrawal, they'd want to hear that password before they can release any funds. Besides, the security that our company take seriously and that Schwab provides, there are some other just good internet tips, internet safety tips that we wanted to share. The one that is really top of mind for us right now is, now a lot of these forms that people sign don't require a wet signature. You don't have to go into the office with a pen in hand and sign documents. People are more and more using DocuSign to authorize really important documents. So DocuSign has been the source of a lot of scam attempts. And it's not really DocuSign sending these documents out, but it's a scammer saying that you have a DocuSign form waiting to be authorized. But if you click on that link, it may ask for some information that can then be stolen by the bad actors. So we always urge caution with our clients is if you receive a DocuSign email that you weren't expecting or that doesn't seem right, check with the institution that you work with and ask if they've sent you anything through DocuSign. If they haven't, then the chances are pretty good that that wasn't a real DocuSign email that you got. And we hear from people all the time that get these DocuSign scam attempts almost every day. And so this is a big deal. One of the big ways that people using the email are trying to get into your information.
Yep, that's a good point. And I think another thing that people should be cautious on clicking on is if it's something that sounds too good to be true. I think, Travis, there's been some bad actors that I would get an email from you saying, "Hey, Scott, you've been such a great employee. Click here to get your $100 gift card on Amazon." It's too good to be true to me. Not that you haven't, not that you're not a generous person, but making
Only
sure
in
that
person.
if it's only, yeah, only in person. But if you receive any emails from anybody saying, "Hey, you won this," and if you have no recollection of signing up for anything or entering anything, that definitely should be something that makes you pause.
Yeah. And the final point that I'll close with on this section is a lot of people use third-party IT companies, or they, go to a Best Buy and maybe there's some IT support there for their computer, that if you receive an email from a support company claiming to be able to help you with your computer problems, they may request access to your computer. And it's really important that you're cautious about giving remote access to any third party or anyone. You want to verify that it's really the company that you want to have access before granting that access, because once they're into your computer, they have access to all your files. And that could be really problematic in all of your information.
Yeah, I think that's a good point to end on, Travis. And I think the hard part with scams is often the feeling that you get after getting scammed is you feel pretty bad about it, right? I mean, you hear
Yeah.
about other people getting scammed and you say that could never happen to me, but just know it happens to everybody, right? And anybody can click on the wrong link or say the wrong thing on the phone. I think that's the part where if something like this happens to you, make sure you contact your bank, your trusted financial advisor, pretty much anybody that has access to funds, and just let them know to be on the lookout. I know we've had clients who experienced this and they called us, and that put us on guard to make sure that we are watching their account for them.
Yeah, and as much as we hear about the scope of financial scams and how much dollars is lost every year, the true amount of that is actually higher because a lot of this goes unreported. People feel embarrassment. They don't want to tell people that they were a victim of a scam. But it is important that you talk to whoever you trust to look out for you and have a plan in place.
Definitely. And we're happy to help. If you have any questions about how to better protect yourself, better protect your assets, that's where we're happy to have the discussion.
Okay, so I think we've touched on a lot of these different ways that you can protect yourself, some of the different scam attempts out there. And of course, as Scott mentioned, if you have any questions about this or you need someone to make sure that your money is safe, contact your advisor, contact your custodian, wherever the money is held in your accounts, and they'll be able to set you up with a really good security plan. That's all for today, folks, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.